I am unashamed. What about you?
So, Jase, yeah. Are you live?
Are we live?
We're live.
Oh, we started this thing. Well, the previous podcast I was telling you about the weekend I had, but I didn't talk about my second event, which was when I did an event in Elkhart, Indiana. Do you know what that's famous for?
Elkhart for elk, maybe?
There's no elk. I asked that. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I said, where are the elk? They had one elk somebody made a statue of an elk, and it's like half of his body was the American flag, and so when you enter, you see this
cool.
elk. Yeah, it was cool, but there's no elk.
Do you think maybe there were elk there a long time ago? How do you get the
There's
name?
no elk in Elkhart, which I thought was really weird.
Did anybody ever explain that to why they're named that?
No, they tried, but then they told me, then they used that as a segue to get on the real thing that Elkhart is known for. I can't believe y'all don't know. It is the RV capital of the world.
Really?
Yes. And
You mean they make them there?
What state?
do they make them?
Indiana.
Indiana. Which the reason I go to Indiana, I'm going to say this right now. I love the people.
Yeah, I've got two events coming up this year. I'm so excited.
This is the infrastructure of the working spirit of America. Those people, I mean, it's electricians, it's a lot of RV manufacturers. I met all these people. I mean, but there's chicken farmers and there's different aspects of our society. But they just, I don't know, every time I go up there, I think I could live here. I mean, I really love Indiana.
We've had a lot of visitors from Indiana.
Well, guess what? And I was in the VIP meet and greet, and so about, I don't know, 15, 20 in, this guy's like, well, when you go back, tell your dad I appreciate him. And people say that.
I pretty much get that at every event, by the way.
He said he baptized me 2 years ago. Huh. And I said, really? I said, he was up here, and he was like, no, I was down there. he said, I was one of those crazies that y'all talk about that said, you know what?
I'm driving
down there and see if I can get Mr. Phil to baptize me. And he said he did. So I thought that was weird, but I can't remember his name. But what I was going to say is, so in a weird turn of events, they actually, because I couldn't get to Elkhart because my schedule was so tight because I was speaking the night before, so I actually had to fly to Chicago, drive 2.5 hours, and then I left from a different location in Indiana. But do you know where I stayed while I was there? I stayed on the campus of Notre Dame University.
Really?
I did.
Yeah, because that's right.
They have a hotel that looks like a building in the Notre Dame. I mean, we pulled in. It was a lot nicer than I thought. I mean, it was just spectacularly nice. The campus is unbelievable. So I had a weird thing happen because the hotel didn't look like a hotel. It just looked like we were going into class as a student with all the other students. There's students walking around. I mean, I'm on the campus, not like I'm beside it or.
Did you go see Touchdown Jesus at the?
Oh, you're not gonna believe this, Al. So I go down, and me and my assistant. So we go down to the stadium, and a guy comes up, and he's like, "What are you doing? Don't you have practice?" And I looked at Bonnie, and she looked at me. He's like, I didn't figure you for the quitting type. I was like, what?
Who does he think of, Rudy?
What? So he's like, I'm like, huh? And he said, so you didn't make the team. I mean, you're out of shape. You look homeless. You hadn't shaved in years.
You've let yourself go.
He said, go back. And I thought, do they do this?
Ever since Rudy, that's how they treat everybody.
This is Rudy.
Yeah. Welcome to Notre Dame campus.
No, that didn't happen. But I thought I would tell that because when I went down there, which I did, I kept visualizing that happen.
Yeah.
I said, when I get back, I'm going to say they have a person that does that.
I thought I was a crazy person. You got me. I thought it was.
Jase, you're getting pretty creative over there. Don't let this podcast go to your head, son.
Well, my point is,
stuff down.
my point is, I kept thinking that was going to happen.
I mean, if he could lie about that with a straight face, I don't know.
I don't know if we can trust it.
No, I kept thinking, this is where Rudy was. So everybody I would see, I
was just going to interject and say there are a few known conservatives who have tried to speak at Notre Dame, but they didn't. It didn't work out well.
Well, they said what they.
I know
told
it's
me
really
was,
sad.
'cause I was on. Look, the event I did was 20 minutes away. Of course,
From Notre Dame.
Yeah, from Notre Dame.
Okay.
But Notre Dame was closer to the airport.
By the way,
So-
what is the term Notre Dame? Well, what exactly is that? What's that?
That's a good question, Phil.
You
I'm gonna
know,
look that
I've
up.
never thought about it.
What is it? What does it mean?
It's
I'm gonna
some kind
look
of
this
foreign
I
statement.
know when we were at the Notre Dame Cathedral. Remember when we saw it in Paris?
Yeah,
So I don't know if it's an homage to
Well,
that. Maybe.
yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I will say this.
It's Catholic based, right?
right.
Well,
It's a Catholic university.
I'll tell you this. When I was at the hotel, the feeling I got was the same feeling I got when I was escorted out of the Trump Hotel,
Yep.
because everybody there was dressed swankily.
Is that a word?
Swankily.
Swankily.
Probably not a word, but I think they'll get it.
We can
Yeah,
add that
what's
to
wrong?
Jace's
What?
growing lexicon of words made up, right? I mean,
Swankily.
swankily.
No, I didn't have an N in it. Swankily. Swankily. They were dressed swankily.
I can
So you
promise
got
you that's not a
swank.
word.
Al, you look up swank.
I'll look up
So
swank.
Notre Dame meaning, listen to this. The Notre Dame meaning is Our Lady of Paris.
Our Lady of Paris.
It is a medieval Catholic cathedral on it's something I can't pronounce, an island on the Seine River. Huh. Well, boy, we have breaking news here.
All right,
So
Jace. Swankily is a word.
Bam!
Put it on the
I
board.
have waited my whole life because Phil
That's right.
is a grammatical English guru.
He knows a
No,
lot
I'm
of
not
vocabulary.
I'm not a guru.
No,
but
you know
you
a
have
lot.
a master's degree in
You're good.
English.
in education, and then my minor was English.
And you're good at
But
it.
I wonder when.
So swankily, Jason, I guess it takes it a step past swanky, is strikingly fashionable or luxurious. Ostentatious or pretentious.
Can we just have a moment here of exhilaration? Because I was embarrassed. I thought, well, I screwed up another word. No, I actually brought that one
It's
back.
actually
We're
a
in
word.
1 Corinthians 15, the resurrection. So I forgot what I was even going to say. Oh, so I was.
Oh, it's an adverb for swanky. Yeah, that's swankily. So it is a word.
So what I was going to say is
You can have swankliness as well.
So I asked the guy, and once again, you're going to find this fascinating. So 3 weeks before this, because, I've been doing an event every weekend for the last month. And I had this month circled on my calendar. And as if I can just get through this, because I've been doing a TV show 4 or 5 days a week, 12 hours a day. We're doing the podcast. I'm going all over the country doing these events because COVID pushed them.
Right.
It's not like I've been scheduling them. These are all things.
They're all
that-
stacked up.
Yeah. So 3 weeks before, I was in Tallahassee, and they had the event at this antique car museum. And some guy had accumulated all these antique cars. It was fascinating. Well, this event was at a museum of RVs. They had a big room that looked like kind of an airport hangar.
Yep.
And almost 1,200 people stacked in here.
Wow.
I was shocked at how many people were there. And so I took a tour because the way the event was scheduled, we did this meet and greet. Then I had an hour while they were eating of nothing to do.
Right.
And so the woman and her daughter who runs the RV tour for the museum, she said, "Would you like the tour?" And I thought, well, I have nothing else to do.
It's very awkward to sit in when other people are eating at an event and you're not eating. It's an awkward
Well,
thing. I've had
I did eat later, and I'm gonna tell you something.
good food.
I've done events all over the world for years, and I never eat. And I didn't get my little thing of food till I left. And I drive back to
I'm the same way. I don't eat.
Notre Dame, which that was another thing, because when I walked back into this hotel that was swankily decorated with museum art,
Jace's new.
with everyone in a suit, or it just, you talking about feel out of place. Because when I stepped up there when we checked in, I could tell. She didn't say anything, but that woman looked at me like, is this some kind of homeless operation? You come to Notre Dame for a night?
And you're carrying your little lunch box that someone gave you.
Well,
down
when
there.
I came back in, I had the lunch in
like
a
you just
styrofoam.
come from the shelter.
They were looking like, oh. And there was a couple over there. Look, the guy literally had a pipe with nothing going on. Because he wouldn't, smoke in an environment, a pipe where people get. But I'm just going to have the pipe for the look. They were looking at me like,
I bet he had a tweed jacket on too.
this is ghastly. This guy has brought in.
Ooh, let this person in.
So, because when I looked in the styrofoam container, look, they basically had a whole chicken that they had grilled, but it had a look about it. And they just had potatoes. I mean, this was medieval gladiator style.
Yeah, meat and
No
potatoes.
silverware.
Eat with your hands.
Just here's you a chicken
and some potatoes.
And I thought, I'm going to try this.
It's like you were at medieval
I
times.
loved it. It was excellent. So I got a hotel room. Who needs room service? I got this. But anyway, so when I asked the guy, when I was telling you that I'm at this museum and they gave me the tour, so it was fascinating how RVs had evolved. I saw the first one, 1913. I mean, somebody just had the idea, let's hook this thing up to the back of whatever you're pulling, and you just saw all the years. I mean, it was really, really nice.
So it starts out with the one you pull, and then it goes on up to these current ones.
Well, and now the current ones, they say they cost up, some of them cost $1 million.
$1 million. I've been in some at the LSU tailgate. They were $750,000 rig.
Yeah. So my father-in-law.
You talking about swanky?
So I thought, this is perfect. Now I have a talking point with my father-in-law because he's into RVs.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, you got to remember, my father-in-law, on multiple occasions, he has called me because he was in his RV and he was going to come to my place, and he's like, hey, could you do me a favor? Could you trim your trees, on your road? And I was like, for what? He's like, well, I'm bringing my RV. I don't want to get it scratched up. I said, no, buy a smaller RV.
It'd be hard to get him where we are.
But I thought, he's going to love this because now I went, you need to come up.
You went
here.
to Mecca.
This is Mecca.
RV
He was
Mecca.
like, well, did you see any of the new ones? I was like, no. I was looking at the history of it. I'm not. But he was all like, ooh, what are the new?
Yeah, what's coming out
RVs?
new
But
next?
Anyway, so here's what I found fascinating, because a few weeks ago I was in Tallahassee. This was old cars. Well, this was old RVs. Well, the guy in Tallahassee, remember I told you he's 22 years old, or 21, put the whole event on. This was two guys. They put this event on, both in their 20s. They're brothers. They were a little older, like 29, I think he said he was. Not affiliate, not like working for the church or anything. They have normal jobs. I forgot exactly what they did. But they just thought, let's do an event and call it an outdoorsman supper, I guess.
Yeah, like a
community.
game supper, yeah.
Yeah. They don't try to make any money. They just like the tickets or whatever. They pay me, but they want to get the gospel out. And I thought, man, what is going on? I feel better about this country. This is twice in a span of 3 weeks where 20-something-year-olds have planned an event where literally thousands of people gathered, and I would assume a lot of unchurched people, and wrap it around something in the outdoor world. Now, the one in Tallahassee was that money actually went to a nonprofit thing that helped teenagers, have a place if they had a tough family life or whatever, or they were for troubled teens or whatever. This here was just one goal: Get a guy in the outdoors world that people will come listen to, and then share Jesus.
Let's take a break. So, Jason, we were talking about do you find treasure or does treasure find you? Which you had an interesting take on that concept and idea. And one of our sponsors, BattleBox, has an interesting question. How are you going to find your new favorite piece of outdoor gear? In BattleBox, it finds you, which I really like. And so this shows up at my house, and I get a new. This is for outdoor survival gear, things we use both in hunting, but just in the outdoor world. And so I try to show you a new product every time, and I thought this was an interesting one, Jace. Huh. It's a little, weatherproof jar of matches. Not a jar, but it's kind of like a plastic tube. Holds your matches in there. They burn for 30 seconds. You can't. We tried to light one they did on the other podcast, and you can't blow it out.
It also says it's waterproof and windproof.
Exactly.
I'm going to have to strike one just to look at it.
I know it. Well, we're going to let you do that, but we don't want you to set the place on fire, so we'll do that after we go off. So anyway, we want you to check these guys out. One person said, this is the best gear I never knew I wanted. So once you get it and you sign up, you're going to love it. Here's what you do. From now until March 31st, you're going to get a free mystery box worth $115 or more with any new subscription at trybattlebox.com/Robertson. That's trybattlebox.com/Robertson. So you get a free mystery box worth $115 right now. Trybattlebox.com/Robertson.
That's pretty handy.
Oh, that's a good idea there. I like that.
I love it. You're right. There's hope for America.
I was just so impressed. I kept trying to, I was quizzing him the whole time because I was trying to say, well, what group is this? He's like, well, there's no group. It's like him and his brother. The group was in the front seat. Now, I met their wives.
They are the
had
group.
Kids, and it's like, and they can't. I said, now you think how many are you expecting? He's like, oh, when we got to 1,000, we quit selling tickets. He said, but there'll probably be 1,200 when you include everyone. I was like, and you think they're gonna? I just didn't believe. It just didn't feel right when I stuck my head in there. I thought, well, you pulled it off.
You got them.
I mean, packed, and it was a great audience, a great atmosphere. The food was great.
Yeah.
And so,
which, by the way, those of you doing events, that's a big part of. If you're going to do something, especially get a lot of men there, make sure your food is good because that's a big component on these deals. You don't want to lay an egg on that if you got them coming.
So, and you got to remember, I did this weekend, and we filmed the week before, and I was out of town the week I'm doing all these events. Well, I guess it's been 2 weeks, I've been having this condition, and I wasn't sure. What I thought had happened was a couple weeks ago, I was up under a house, and we were hunting for the show. But, I mean, there were, when you go up under a house,
there's a lot of stuff.
In the South.
There's a lot of stuff living under there.
Things go there to hide, especially with teeth, claws, and little
stingers.
So, I remember one day I was getting a headache really bad, but I hadn't had time to go to the doctor, and so I took a shower that night a couple weeks ago, and then I get this pain, and you remember when I had the earwig?
The earwig.
Yeah, and I thought, you know what? I think I got another earwig in it. But I just
the internet says they never go in your ear. What would be the odds you'd get 2 of them?
Now I'm like, now I have another one, or I thought it was a critter.
Yeah.
So I tried to just mind over matter. No, it's not going.
Sometimes that won't work.
But this weekend, I mean, I was so miserable. I mean, like when I stood up in Indiana to talk, I kept saying this. I didn't think the mic was working, but the problem
you just couldn't hear it.
I couldn't hear myself.
Yep, I've been.
I had 100% can't hear anything in my right, and my left was a little wonky. So as soon as I landed, while I'm sitting out, if you remember from
By the way, that's another thing that doesn't help ear problems is air travel.
Right.
Because you get the pressure.
Well, and the pressure was so severe, I thought my head's fixed to explode.
Right.
I mean, I'm dying here. You know how it is when you start thinking.
No wonder you honked the horn at that sleeping woman.
Well, yeah. But while I was on that runway, just doing nothing for watching, 30 or 40 minutes of my life evaporate, I text one of my buddies in the medical world, and who I duck hunt with, and I was like, look, I'm fixing to leave again because tomorrow I leave and go out of town for another week.
Right.
And I'm like, I have got to do something. It's Sunday. I can't. I mean, unless I go to the ER. But
And wait there half a day. Yeah.
Well, right. And I just thought, can you come look in my ear and say, I think I got a critter in here. And I think he died, which is what I thought. I said, I think he got in there and I had 2 days of discomfort, but now he's dead. And I can't hear anything and the pressure.
Now he's just gumming up the works in there.
So he's like, yeah, I'll come tonight after church. So I was like, okay. And because I was like, I'll pay you for your time, whatever. I don't want to, but I'm in misery here. So he comes by, brings his dad as his assistant, and then it had gotten worse during the day.
Yeah.
And so he looked up in there and he started, I was like, oh boy, here we go.
You never like to hear a medical professional go,
Look, that joker got my head on the side of my table, and he was pouring something in there, and he was grabbing, and make a long story short, 15, 20 minutes later, when that came out of my ear, and it was like a plug out of a wine bottle. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm like, life. All the pressure. Now, it turned out no critter. It was just
earwax.
But it's a plug.
Yeah.
Like
I had the same thing a few years ago.
Frightening, disturbingly large.
Yeah.
Very gross. And I was like, well, gee whiz. No wonder I couldn't hear anything. No wonder I thought my head. So of course, he's my buddy. He wouldn't take any money. So I was like, here you go. Because right now in this moment, I would give you everything I have.
For the relief.
I said, everything I have, I would just sign it over to you and just start over because I felt so much better. But the best thing I could think of is I had 2 bone-in ribeyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I just handed them to him, and I said, please take them.
And me knowing him as well as I do, that actually was better for him than any other.
He had a faraway look in his eye, and he thought, good trade.
He's the one, every time I come back from Alabama, I bring him some smoked bacon from my place down there.
Well, I was making sure I didn't, that we weren't just on an island in the medical world. There's procedures. But, the guys, it literally was like, and so now doing this podcast, it's amazing.
Or you can hear us again.
I could hear y'all. I can hear myself. And I told Missy about it, and she was like, because she's not here. She's seeing the grandbaby. And she was like, well, maybe you'll quit hollering the whole time. I said, was I doing that? She said, yeah. You were just going up a decibel level. But I wasn't going to say anything because I thought, well, why is he? I was like, well, babe,
why is he yelling all the time?
I couldn't hear what I was saying.
You need to do that before it gets to that stage.
Well, Phil, I thought something was in my ear. I think it
was in your ear.
Well, I know, but I had this done with the earwig. That wasn't too long ago.
I've wondered
a year or two.
I've wondered the same thing because when I had the exact same experience, Chase, and when old Wayne did mine in his office. Remember Wayne?
Yeah.
Rutledge? And when he dug all that out, it was so loud. I was like, whoa. Everybody's just got to, like, it sounds like they were yelling. It was so loud. It was like I had one of those. Remember the old, when
that's
they had
the way I was yesterday.
Yeah.
All day.
I wonder if
I
that's
could hear
just
birds chirping.
A southern part of the United States makes that earwax, whatever.
I guess it has something to do with the drainage. We have so much drainage because of all
he
of it.
said, too, he's like, well, look, when you're out digging in the dirt all the time, you're getting stuff in your ear and, the wax build up.
I don't know how anything would get through that maze of...
That's what I thought, the hair.
you got hair covering it.
But he said, there's a lot of dirt in your ear. And
Jay ought to bathe more. Have you ever thought about just bathing more?
I said, I use soapy water, but I get dirty all the time. I dig around in the dirt all the time. So, but now, that's why I said I'm hearing dogs bark in the distance, birds singing. I actually just wandered around in my yard.
Listening, like you were a deaf man that'd been here.
I can hear. It's embarrassing. So I was trying to tell Missy, but every time I start telling, she's, oh, this is gross. This is making a skin crawl. Don't tell anybody that this happened. I was like, I'm telling this on the
the podcast,
podcast now
isn't it?
because you said don't tell it. What I
So
thought,
when they took mine out, Jace, that his assistant was a nurse, and every time he would dig out another bit of this stuff, she would go, "Oh, ooh!" I mean, like she was like commentating on how bad it was.
well, the reason I'm telling it because we're in 1 Corinthians 15. I'm like, this body, if you hadn't noticed, because I forget, it's breaking down.
Oh yeah.
It
Have you noticed that?
there's
Yeah,
things
and
happen.
you're still relatively young buck.
Well, compared to you,
There you go.
but compared to this other society, no, I'm an old fart now.
I did tell the nurseman, we call him the nurseman. He duck hunts with us. I did tell him, I said, for the next
Well,
time
he told me not to say who he was.
Yeah, we're not saying his name.
Yeah.
Nurse man.
yeah, nurseman. So I told him, I said, yeah, check out one of my ears. I want you to,
And you had the same problem,
well, yeah.
which is what I'm saying. We're
It's
getting
the
old.
draining. I've always thought it was kind of I have so much sinus issues. I thought it was
I
coming
just
from.
told him to bring his tools. Next time he shows up, we'll just check it.
But
He
the
said,
bottom line is no matter what you do, the body's breaking down. And when or Paul makes the connection of, I mean, he makes first these philosophical arguments saying, if the dead aren't raised, we're all doomed. I mean, there's no faith. We're just a big basket of doom and devastation.
You got to remember, both the
destruction.
Apostle Paul and Peter referred to their bodies, our bodies, their natural bodies that we were given at birth. They did both say they're tents.
which
Temp.
which
Right.
which
Tells
gives you
you
that
it's a
idea
temporary,
of
yeah.
temporary. Let's take another break. So we got a brand new sponsor, and I'm super excited about trying these guys because I've discovered as the older I get, in the old days you could just get you an extra cup of coffee. Some of the young people do these superpower energy drinks, and you just keep on going, but that doesn't quite work as much anymore, Jace. I don't know for me. I don't know. You're not quite as old as I am, but so one of the things these guys, it's called Human In, and they've got something that they call Super Beats Heart Chews, and I've heard of this product before, so I'm excited that they're sponsoring our podcast. I'm very much looking forward to trying it, but it's a new way to start your day. You don't have to worry about those pick me ups later on. This is going to give you energy as you start. They're plant based. They can become part of your morning routine. You don't have that caffeine crash later in the day. They're clinically researched. They're grape seed extract, so it's all natural, which is really good. And they really help with your blood pressure, which is what I'm excited about because I inherited from mom some blood pressure issues. So check these guys out. I'm going to be trying them myself. I'll let you know. You get up to 45% off plus free shipping if you go to SuperBeats, BEETS, superbeats.com/Phil. Theirs is the best offer available anywhere. That's superbeats.com/Phil. 45% off, superbeats.com/Phil.
But you remember when Paul said he had a thorn in his flesh,
Right.
and he was because that's what I was saying. I've been doing all this stuff for the Lord, or the Lord's doing it through me, however you want to say. And I was like, I have this earwig in my ear. Because I have prayed the whole time. I'm like, I'm so miserable, even at the event.
So at one time it was an earwig, wasn't
Well, that was, yeah, I had an earwig in my ear. Now, the difference in that was when that thing got in my ear, it was searing pain. I mean, I was crying out like, I'm
Take me to
going-
the hospital.
Yeah, call 911. I'm dying. I've been invaded by an alien. It is taking over. There's blood going to come out the other. I thought, oh, it's over. I'm either.
But
I'm not making light of that.
But I was with you when you said it because our listeners were sending us things saying, "Oh, that's a myth. They don't really crawl in your ear." And I was like, "Your point was it's called an earwig. Why would somebody call
I
it that?"
looked it up on the internet, and they said it was a myth.
Right.
It's not a myth. It's
But-
a reality. And look, I've had people come up to me at events and argue with me. They said they don't get in your ear. I said, one didn't get the memo. It crawled in my ear and tried to kill me.
But to your point, it's called an earwig. They don't call it just like a neck wig.
That's why I never look up the internet. I said, no.
Well, it's true, Phil.
I wondered how long we
An
would go
earwig
before
goes
Dad
in
would
your
say
ear, and they say,
No, you're right.
it didn't happen. You're like,
Well, we
"Get out."
looked up what Notre Dame means. I could be wrong. Somebody typed that in there.
Right.
That it was. I'm not sure why we call. What did it say? It was a hotel in Paris.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's probably true, though, because they have the Cathedral of Notre Dame. It's in that same region, so that's probably where it came from.
I'm gonna tell you this. I was. There was a couple of takeaways there because I never finished that story. But the guy I was grilling him. I was like, we drove out of the city. We got over here, and all of a sudden, everybody seemed not rednecky, but close. I was like, but over at Notre Dame, he was like, well, they're a little more, it's a little more liberal over there. He said that, you know. But I was like,
You remember who the mayor of Notre Dame was until he ran for president? Pete Buttigieg. He was the mayor.
well, what I said I said, and number two, I can't believe that Brian Kelly left here to come to Louisiana.
That's true.
I thought right now he is going through a culture shock. And he said, well, you know, he did start trying to talk with a country,
He did it at
slang.
the basketball game on the mic. I saw the video.
But I see why now. Because to say where I was staying was uptight is an understatement. I mean, it was like, you've entered.
So he just needs in some
class.
crazy Cajuns to get his life right.
Man, but you wouldn't know that unless you went up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about that there was not one sprig of grass at a place on that campus.
Yeah.
It is pristine.
Yep.
I mean, it was, and really the outside of Notre Dame Stadium, it looked like something from the Gladiator days, just the way it was shaped, but new. I don't know. I guess you sit on TV and you see, because it's tradition, they have the field. It was old to me.
Right.
From
It
the
is old.
It is old, but from the outside, it's majestic.
Yeah.
I mean,
They spruced it up.
It just had a look about it. I was ready to run out the tunnel and say, let's give it a
Well, it's
whirl.
like, but I don't know when's the last time you've been to Tiger Stadium, but that's old, and it looked old for a long time, but they've spruced it up now on the outside. It looks a lot better.
Same thing.
Right.
So it was a great event. I love those people there. I really feel like the Lord is going to start something there from our gathering together. I just loved it. It was
I think
awesome.
that's awesome. Before we shift gears into getting to our text today, which is 1 Corinthians 15:35, I want to mention a couple of things. I mentioned before, Dad's got some really good new information, on phil.substack.com, so check that out. Also, don't forget about Uncanceled, which is, you go to Amazon and get it, be sure and do a review. And we mentioned before about Ukraine, people are still looking for places to donate, and our onekingdom.org is a place you can do that, make sure the money gets to some people that need the help. So I want to mention all three of those. So we're in 1 Corinthians 15. It's been a little bit because Jase has had some wild rabbit holes he's taken us down.
Look, life happens.
It does. So we get to that point of the resurrection body, because we've talked about the last couple of times we were here in this text, we talked about the importance of the resurrection in terms of how it relates in the gospel. So he's going to take it to another level and actually talk about what the resurrection body will be. And he says in verse 35, someone may ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body will they come? And so, that's a question. And you think about it, I mean, people dwell on that all the time. They're like, well, what's this going to be like? Well, are we ethereal? Do we float around in a cloud? Everybody wants to know exactly what it's going to be like, in the thing. But he says that question really is a foolish one, because he says, how foolish? Which I find fascinating, because so many people want to ask that question, but he said, that's
including me.
I know.
I've asked that question. How is this going to work? I mean, what kind of body? Which we said in an earlier podcast, what happens if I'm at the tip of a nuclear bomb and I'm literally incinerated? How in the world could I come back?
Right.
But he said
His point is, if you pick up an acorn and then look at where it came from, you're like, how could this turn into that?
But just a seed, perhaps. I guess that would be a better place to
Yeah.
insert acorn.
Right.
Perhaps of wheat or something else. Because you think about it, if you put a piece of corn in the ground and you say this
Kernel
is
of corn.
yeah, I'm eating, or like
And it looks like nothing you put in there.
and then all of a sudden, here comes this green stalk.
That's right.
And you're like, what is that? Corn? No, it's not.
full of what you looked at to begin with.
Like a bunch
But
of them.
you would commonly think that's not corn. I
Right.
saw corn. Corn is a little yellow kernel. And they're like, but that's corn too. We refer to them as the same thing. Well, what's the difference? You got two different bodies,
Yeah.
but they're drastically different.
Right.
Now, when you look at all the verses about Jesus, maybe I should pause there and just keep reading. But because Jesus, it was him. Remember when he got his new body?
Yep.
And then 1 John 3 says our body's going to be like him.
Right.
But he was drastically different in that he could do things with the new body that was incredible, like change his shape, go through a wall,
Look like a different
look
person.
like a different, he could levitate, I
Levitate.
guess.
We
our
could
body-
fly.
You get up out of this atmosphere not too far, because one of the planes I was on, I think they had a hole in it, because the air, it was the coldest I've ever been in my life. There was air seeping from somewhere, and everybody just kept putting every piece of clothing there. I was like, why is it so cold in here? And I was like, I think we're out in the atmosphere.
It's slipping in on us.
don't
Would have been
know.
about negatives.
That's a different story.
Hang on. Let's take
Well, hey, it's the coldest I've been.
Let's take a break.
In my life, it was so cold. So, but here's verse 38 is the key. But God gives it a body as he has determined. And then he goes into all this stuff he gives the different kinds of body. All flesh is not the same. Men have one kind of flesh. Animals have another. Birds have another. Then he gets into the heavenly bodies as far as like stars and
Yep.
the galaxy.
Comets, asteroids. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. And the splendor of the earthly bodies is another. The sun has one kind of splendor. The moon and the stars different from star and splendor. I think you got to take a time out right here and realize something, though, that when what Paul said in Romans 1 that says, based on what has been made, God's eternal power and divine nature can be clearly seen, so that all men are without excuse. Because here he affirms that. Just the different kinds of bodies that we have and the regeneration. I mean, I think, yesterday was the first day of spring? Well, what happens with spring? Everything takes shape, the shapes that are, they then bloom into another shape of body. You think that's just an accident?
Yeah.
That God gave you all these visuals of that metamorphosis thing that happens in life?
And have you noticed that it doesn't happen? It's like you just one day all of a sudden look up and say, oh, spring's here. Like, no matter what the calendar says, all of a sudden you see everything start turning green and you're like, it's springtime. It's just by looking at it.
Dan called me yesterday, and he said they've just have some information for you from some of the powers that be, that the planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, you start from the closest one moving out, all of that matter. The sun is bigger. It's the sun itself is 99% more volume than all the planets put together. Just 3 or 4 of them have like a rocky something you can stand on.
Right.
Most of them are just gas and whatnot.
Right.
But as far as just matter, 99% of the matter that we have, the sun has 99% of it.
Wow.
We are so small that I said, well, I knew we were a speck, Dan, from just looking, at the planets on the left and the right. I knew we were not that large. The sun, it takes up 99% of this, well, what do you
Solar
call
system.
Yeah, the solar system right here. 99% of it is
and
the sun.
according to the world,
We're
happened-
beyond tiny. We're like we make up 1% the Earth, and Mars and Jupiter and the ones that are close to us there.
but Phil,
Mercury,
according
Venus.
And we're
to the
talking
world,
about the Earth, and most of us will never traverse the Earth itself.
Look,
it's so big
We are
compared
so
to us.
small.
And
we
an
are
accident.
we're beyond a speck. So when he's talking about the heavenly bodies, there are also heavenly bodies. Well, I'm just giving you an update from yesterday. Dan called me. He's all excited. He said the sun takes up 99.9% of all the matter.
well, Nan's behind. I knew that. The sun's bigger than all the all the planets combined.
That's right.
I mean, but
Way
my point is the world says all of that is a result from an accidental explosion with no intelligent force behind it.
You're saying what I told Dan. I said, Dan, the explosion, what we are from the explosion, if that's what happened, I don't believe it is. I said, I've been calling us a speck. We're smaller than that. We're like tiny.
Well, and then, you know,
we're a little tiny heavenly body, and we got two on the left, Mercury, Venus,
But the power
Earth,
of all this,
Mars, those are the
but
ones
even
that are
that,
rocky.
Phil, is not the power of what his point was, because when he got to 42, he said, so will it be with the resurrection of the dead. The power of all that is that your body that is sown is perishable, verse 42. The body that is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body, which I think that last
That's
statement,
why he said to them to begin this little session. That's why he said, if it's preached that Christ has been raised from the dead, how can some of you say there is no resurrection of the dead? And then he's elaborating on what he was saying there, which is worthy of note.
but to Jace's point too, Dan, think
How
about
would
it.
this guy have even known to make? If he just dreamed this up, boy, that was quite the dream to write down what we are reading. We're like, how in the world
But again, the most
did a guy 2,000 years ago? How did he come up with this information?
the most amazing thing is all those things we've talked about: the sun, the universe, the red dwarf. That, by the way, millions of our sun would fit into. They've already found that.
Oh yeah,
All that is perishable.
all of it.
It's all dying,
Yeah,
including our
Well,
sun.
But look, Phil, I'll take it more than that. That star they found 15 years ago, or maybe it was more than that, but Canis Majoris, which at that
That's the
time
one I was talking
was
about,
the biggest one. Well, it's number 7 now.
Oh, now they found.
They done found 6 bigger than that. You say, well, how big was that star? And so I heard somebody speak one time. I've said this before, but he said, well, let me tell you how big it was. If you compared it to the Earth, and if the Earth was a golf ball, you could fill up the state of Texas 2 feet deep in golf balls into this star.
So that many.
Have you
that
driven
many,
across Texas lately?
that many Earths would fit into this
2
star.
foot deep, knee deep in golf balls across the whole state. There's places out in West Texas where you walk miles and not see
boy,
another.
that explosion! I told Dan yesterday when he gave me that information. I said, Dan, all I can say is that explosion that the atheists say happened. It was quite the doozy.
And in the last
And
15 or 20
and
years,
we came out of the explosion a tiny dot.
well, and in
Hang
the
on, Jace. Let's take a break.
And in the last 15, 20 years, we found 6 stars bigger than that one.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I think it's awesome that Paul, via the Holy Spirit, trickles all that down into us, individuals who die, who worry and wonder about what's going to happen after death. It reminds me of the story of Matthew 22 when they came to Jesus and they were trying to trap him. And what if a woman is married 7 times? I mean, who's going to be her husband on, at the resurrection? And he's like, you're ignorant of the scriptures and you don't understand the power of God. Now, then everybody dissects what his analysis was when he says people will neither be given in marriage or they'll be like the angels, and then everybody's like, oh, there's no sex in heaven, and there, because obviously we'd be eternal beings, but they're missing the point. If you can put a body on all these stars and then the galaxies and the planets and all the little details, the little bitty bodies from the mosquito to the mosquito hawk to the bat you have all these different kinds of body. You're underestimating the power of God. If you have the Holy Spirit of God and you're going to be resurrected, whatever this body is that your mind cannot wrap your head around because you're ignorant of the power of God, it's way better than you could ever even imagine or contemplate. Or you're not worried. We're not worried about, I don't know if I'll recognize my wife. I mean, that's kind of how foolish our thinking is.
What if I don't know the people I love?
I mean, how old will I be? Because I
like
was great when I was 25.
You're running into your mate that you spent a few years with, and you're like, who are you? I'm your wife. Oh, I didn't know that.
You're underestimating the potential of having a God who loves you, that literally is not bound by the laws of nature. He creates, I mean, that Canis Majors, how big it is, he created that in less than a blink of an eye. He's going to take care of your body. You're going to like it.
What I like about Jace is that Paul has such a, which really should help us to your point, that he has such a casual way of describing it. If you think about it from God's perspective, to us, it's like a farmer. Time to plant. You go out, you take all these seeds, which are dead plants, and you replant them, and it grows up. What do? You come in, you harvest them, you start the whole process again. No big deal. He says our death and burial, and then ultimately our resurrection is just like that to God. In other words, he doesn't view that any different than a farmer that grows a crop.
That's why he made.
That's how casual it is.
That's why he made the analogy in the 3rd chapter when we were there. They were all divided, and they were following him, and they were following there. And he's like, "Look, I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God made it grow." He then made a analogy of life being given in the farm world. Now he's doing the same thing here.
That's right.
When it comes to the resurrection. I mean, because the key thing is God makes it grow, and that's what the world misses. They miss the fact that when you stick the kernel of corn in the ground, something or somebody that you cannot explain, no matter how much you put it in the realm of science, something is making that grow. And they making it change form.
And I think if you put a bigger name on it, it makes it like photosynthesis, like, photosynthesis.
I noticed.
It's just like healing was the other thing I was going to say. When they patch you up, well, who's making that heal?
Yeah, how does that heal?
When he finally gets to 1 Corinthians 15, we've already covered Matthew. We studied that in detail. And he was talking about all these things that were going to happen that we're now reading about in the Corinthian letters. He's explaining Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
Correct.
If you want to say, well, he's explaining the promise made way back when he said the seed of a woman will be the Savior of the world, will give you all this. But all of the history of the whole thing is brought together in 1 Corinthians 15. First, the gospel, which was the thing from the beginning.
Yep.
Verse 20, Christ has indeed been raised from the dead. First fruits of those. He goes back to Genesis. Death came through a man. Here's Adam and Eve. The resurrection of the dead comes through Jesus, a man. As in Adam all die. He's bringing it all together, the whole story. In Christ all to be made alive. Each in his own turn. He goes back to when Jesus, they killed him by hanging him on a cross. He's the first fruits because 3 days later he said, check this out. Check this body out. I can fly. I can move. I can go through walls. There's nothing limited now. When he comes, so now he's saying, here's the end of time. Those who belong to him. I just want to stress to our listeners, the end will come. That's the end of the world. When he, Jesus, hands over the kingdom, you say, what's this waiting on the kingdom to get here? Sometime in the future, the kingdom's going to be created. He says, no. When this ends, there is no 1,000-year reign and all that stuff over there. Nope. He's going to hand the kingdom over to God the Father after he's destroyed all dominion and power, and the last enemy to be destroyed is death. He said, so he's bringing you up to date How could he be handing the kingdom over to God at the end of the world if it's another 1,000 years? He
Well,
says,
but
no.
you've opened up a can of worms there. I mean, so what does it mean? Because they're going to say, well, what? And we believe
The kingdom would
that-
have to be there if it was
well,
handed
if
over
the
to
kingdom
God.
is here, and we're reigning as sons and daughters of God on the planet now.
Correct?
But people, the reason they think it's a futuristic thing is because they're like, well, there's no way we're reigning. But when you think about it, if you have the Spirit of God in
Of
you,
course we're reigning.
we're reigning because we have the message that gives your plan, your purpose, and your evacuation
That's my
of the
point.
planet, which would make you the most dangerous and the most powerful person on earth.
That's why I brought
thanks
it
to
up.
God's Spirit.
Which
why I brought it up.
basically, if whether we're killed or not, or martyred or not, or whatever happens to us, we die of cancer, whatever, it doesn't matter
Doesn't matter.
because we know we're going to come out.
I want to say this because Phil brings up a good point. Time is one of the most misunderstood things there is because, if you have an injury, in the unbelieving world, they say, well, we've got to take some time and let this heal. They can do what all they do. What exactly is time going to do
Pass.
to heal this?
It's just going to
But they're
pass.
like, well, you just need some time. He'll be out 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Why? Well, the time is the healer of the body. Is that actually accurate? Is time actually healing?
Nope.
Or is there a process
Time just passes.
that no one can understand outside of believers? Because people say that. They're like, boy, if I could just see a miracle, if I could just have a miracle, heal me. It's happening every day.
Yep.
Time is passing and people's injuries are being healed, but you're taking for granted that there is something out there called time that has some kind of medical kit that's going in there and allowing this to heal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And so then on the church side, we have the misunderstanding of time because everybody's waiting for good times to come our way. They're like, because it can't happen here. When actuality, you can actually have joy despite all the pain and the problems because God has given us this hope through his Spirit.
I agree. And that's a perfect jumping off place to overtime because I want to talk about not just that aspect of it, about the kingdom, but also there's some other misunderstanding in the religious world and Christianity about the resurrection body itself and what that looks like from this text. So I want us to kind of explore that a little bit in our extra 15 minutes. Remember, it's blazetv.com/unashamed if you want to get this bonus content. So we'll see you on the other side.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.